because right now you can propagate the headers of a chain through the native bridge with a rollup. It's just really slow. We tried that at first, actually. That's one of the first things that we did. People didn't really want to buy it.
Welcome back to Coordinated, guys. Today we have Bo from Polymer Labs. I think you guys must have about like Polymer, and they are building since the Cosmos era, and the very prominent names in the Interop space. I think this episode is going to be jam-packed learning and discussion about Interop, like obviously Eigenlayer and the entire kind of IBC and the entire cross-chain communications, abstraction, account abstraction, and how our future is going to look like. So, like, hey, Bo, welcome to the show. Thanks for like doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Satyaki. Thanks for having me on. Like, we're really excited to be here. Happy to kick off however you'd like.
As I mentioned, I think Polymer is a very well-known name in the entire CT space, particularly in the Interop era. As I was mentioning, it's there since for a very long time and kind of the OGs of Interop. And many people have like kind of very take Polymer as an inspiration. Obviously, like I've heard about the name and all. But I think before we go deep into what Polymer is and what the journey started, just want to know a little bit about you, how you came into crypto and how life was before crypto for you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think I would be working in crypto. It happened naturally over time, but I'll talk a little bit about what I was doing before. So prior to crypto, I worked in Web 2. I had a bunch of different startups. I worked at Uber uh, on high-performance database systems. And earlier in my career, I kind of wanted to decide on a path to take. And the three most interesting, technically deep areas of computing that I was, I guess, like trying to pick from was database systems, operating systems, and compilers. And for operating systems and compilers, there's only so many projects. They're usually at like these like really, really big tech companies, and there's not too many startups. Not many startups can get funding to build an entirely new operating system. For database systems, there's a lot more opportunity and a lot more variety in terms of the work. So I ended up choosing that and working on database systems for a few years. When I worked in DeFi, and I did DeFi as a hobby, so I just wanted to learn how it worked. I realized I quickly wanted to work more on the infra side. And then from an infra perspective, blockchains are just another form of database system. The constraints are a little bit different, but the problem domain is still the same to me. You have like Byzantine fault tolerant requirements, censorship resistant requirements, and others as well. But more or less the same.
So, as you mentioned, your interest is into DeFi and all. So, like, what are the places you explored? Kind of like, you're a tech maestro, obviously. So, like, did you kind of build some mini DeFi apps, or did you like trade it? And like, when is the time frame also? Like, it is which year you started? Yeah.
Yeah, I started in 2020. So during DeFi summer, I worked on a few DeFi protocols. Reflecting on that time, I would say that the main question that I had in my mind, and probably the main question that a lot of people had in mind, was where the hell is this yield coming from? And I was the one like writing the code. So oftentimes I would work on projects, and I write code for this project, and the framing to me would be like, oh yeah, people are going to like invest in this thing. And my main question was always like, I don't see how this thing I don't see how the code inherently generates any real yield. I was like, this seems like a Ponzi. It seems like the only way you get yield into this thing is if other people just keep buying it for whatever reason. And after working DeFi for that short period of time between like 2020 and 2021, I kind of like came to roughly that conclusion that a lot of yield is based on emissions, and a lot of these emissions aren't really being upheld by any like long-term sustainable product. So that was one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to distance myself from like working in DeFi. Obviously, there's a lot of great DeFi protocols, and there's a lot of DeFi protocols that generate real utility, have real yield. I was not working on any of those DeFi protocols at the time.
So, like, did you kind of build anything in the mainnet, or did you kind of like take some product to the market something like that, or you were experimenting that by yourself? DeFi
Yeah,
protocols. Yeah.
yeah. So I worked on a few different protocols. I would say that I'll just give you the category. So there was like a few yield farms. Those were not like super interesting. It was kind of like fork yearn V2. Uh, Create this wrap token that's like quadruply wrapped in this other token. Launch a token with a bunch of emissions that incentivizes these vaults. And then farm these vaults essentially. And there's just so many like yield farms, as you could probably remember from that time, that were kind of set up in this way. Some of the more interesting things were like do an UMA integration into their Oracle system to generate some naturally rebalancing stable coin on the price of, I don't know, Bitcoin or something. And those products are a little bit more interesting, but ultimately, like, didn't really have it. Like, none of these products really had any inherent like value. Um,
So like where like these were you experimenting with DeFi's and all, like were you like kind of doing your Web2 job, or you aped in? This is the when you kind of figured out DeFi.
I actually didn't really invest in DeFi. I probably should have invested more. I mostly just like wrote smart contracts for a few protocols. A lot of these projects are just open source, so I would just go in the repo, make some changes, and just for my own like personal interest. For the most part, I wasn't getting paid. Um, and then I was working at a full-time job at the time. So like it's like I was working at a startup. I was the first employee at my startup. So uh, if the guys there are listening to this, I was still working during the daytime on my day job. Uh, yeah, it was I would say like my full-time job was this database company called Chronosphere, where I was working on the metrics and monitoring database there.
So like got it. So basically you are into kind of very big tech Web2 companies, Uber and all.
Yep.
And then kind of you figured out DeFi in the DeFi summer, you wrote smart contracts and you like kind of learned about the space and all. So kind of then how the transition happened to the interop space, how you came towards that.
I realized that the existing interop was really bad at the time. Uh, the main story that I usually tell is I looked at the AnySwap code uh, back in the day. I don't remember if they had a different name. I think it was AnySwap. I believe it was AnySwap. So this is one of the early or multi-chain. Sorry, I don't know if you guys remember multi-chain. It's the one that didn't get hacked, but the founder got arrested by the CCP, and they shut the project down, and the Chinese government took it over. Uh, it was that project. So I remember looking at the code for this and thinking that there's a way that we could do this better. And it seems very early in the interop space. And the analogy is like this is kind of like early like 1970s, 1980s, early internet. We're anticipating there's going to be a lot of different competing standards, and I think that's kind of playing out right now, where you have a lot of these different competing standards, native and non-native. And we wanted to be in the arena and be a part of this like early, like building this core part of the early internet, which is really interesting to me.
So, like, if you can kind of give us a time frame of that, because I think that is how we can visualize how the interop era started. So, like, around 2020, you were into DeFi, and then like when you started looking in the multi-chain and Uniswap quad, what's the time frame like?
It was 2021 early. I remember Binance Smart Chain, I believe, launched in 2021, like early, like January or February. I don't remember which month it was, but I think it was early, because I was working on a few DeFi protocols at the time, and the the directive was, hey, we need to expand. It was like, look, like we're on Ethereum. Ethereum is expensive. There's this BSC thing. It just launched. There's a ton of protocols launching there. There's a ton of yield. We need to get our tokens on that chain. So I was like, okay, cool. Like we'll work with whatever provider that we can find. And I think multi-chain or AnySwap was one of those providers. So we actually worked with one of those providers to bring our token over to this new chain. And that's around the time when I think Thorchain was also very popular during that period of time. And the initial idea that we had, and it's pretty much what Axelar is today, was why don't we take Thorchain, let's remove all of the AMM logic and turn it into a cross-chain interop protocol. And like when I think about the ingredients of Thorchain, aside from the AMM, I think about threshold signatures. I think about a decentralized validator set. I think about using that validator set as an oracle for all of these cross-chain transactions. And that's more or less what Axelar was. We later found out that was Axelar's architecture, and then we kind of like shifted away from that.
So like okay, so like we are in let's say 21 end or something like that, and kind
Yeah.
of when the Polymer journey started and when you met your co-founder and like
Yeah.
when this kind of experimentation of you kind of turned into a proper vision in the organization.
Yeah, so I actually met my co-founder before I started working in DeFi. We met through like a friend of a friend, non-professionally, so like outside of a professional context. And we actually ended up working together on a few DeFi projects, and in addition to some of our early employees as well. The Polymer team really came together at the end of 2021. I think I was playing around with some of these ideas, just doing like some learning and exploration because like transparently, when I first started, especially in 2020, I knew nothing about DeFi. Well, when we first started looking at infra, I knew very little about blockchain infra. I just had to learn like very quickly. So I spent some time exploring, and by the end of like 2021, we were able to like raise our initial round of funding. We were able to hire our first employee. A funny story with our first employee, his name is One Way. I actually go like way back with him. I've known him since I was a child. He was my dad's a professor at a college in the U.S. and he was one of my dad's postdocs. So I actually met him when I was a kid, and then like surprisingly, we just ended up working on these things together. I think we're both like to nerd out about the same things. So yeah,
So like is he still with Polymer?
yeah, he's still with Polymer. Yeah, he's still here. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. How many like how's the team strength of Polymer as of now, like currently?
Yeah, we have 20 people. It's grown and shrunk over the years, like fluctuated in size. I think 20 is the sweet spot. I feel like once you get into like that 20 plus range, you need more communication or like better, more efficient communication, and you need to be more directed. Right now, we just have like all to all. We can just like everyone can talk to anyone, and feel like a much closer knit group. I think after a certain point, you have to change the way you organize the team, and it's not more efficient for what we want to do.
I think that is where the fun is. I think that's why more and more startups are kind of coming because with internet and with this digital era, we're kind of moving apart a bit. And when a strong knitted organization is there, there's a human touch and like you don't feel that hierarchy. Hey, there's this boss, there's this senior, and we can kind of efficiently function together and a better outcome of everything we're focusing on. I think we let's move on to the end of the Polymer story kind of like we got the foundational like setup of how Polymer came into the space. So like want to know like how will you define Polymer? Like what is Polymer?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about our journey since 2021 when we founded the company. Um, like transparently, we initially were very research focused. I think that was probably very clear in the work that we were doing. We're like a research-led organization. We put a lot of our eggs into the IBC basket. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to extend that. We did a lot of ZK research and other things during that period of time. And over time, we've transitioned from a research focus to a builder focus. So I would say that today we're much more of a builder first organization, meaning that like we focus primarily on builder needs and asks over like various interesting research topics, which I think is a natural progression. The spirit of polymers is still strong. I think in our core, we still like love research. We still love, challenging technical subjects, but in terms of like product direction focus, it's much more laser focused on what is the best UX that we can offer at the most efficient and cost effective um, pricing for our users. And our user base that we're targeting is also more focused. So initially, we're focused on connecting different layer ones together. Because at the time, when you say like Cosmos era, you're referring to like when everyone was talking about Cosmos, we thought there was going to be 1 million app chains. Terra was booming. Everyone's like, oh, this is like the next big thing. This ecosystem's been bigger than Ethereum. Everyone was like super hyped up. And, that just didn't quite play out. I think now we're seeing a different landscape evolve, meaning that like the Cosmos and Ethereum were still there, but it's much more roll-up focused. It's not like there's not going to be a million layer ones. There's going to be potentially a million rollups. There's going to be a million rollups on Ethereum, TBD on the sovereign rollup ecosystem for like Celestia. There's also like Initia, there's Dimension. There's a lot of these rollup ecosystems now. So like now our focus is like, okay, let's solve for rollups and let's get the best UX possible across rollup ecosystem. Right now we're just targeting Ethereum, but we want to grow from there.
Awesome. Before as we are kind of discussing polymers, I think I want to know one thing. I think all the focus area of polymer is currently Ethereum, but you guys have spent enough time on Cosmos also. So I have two questions there. One is, what's the kind of a dev experience of you working in Ethereum and Cosmos? What's the thought?
Yeah, I would say Cosmos devs are more used to the complexity of the things in the Cosmos. I think when you're dealing with Cosmos, you're dealing with blockchain internals mostly. Wait, 1 second, I'm just gonna. In Ethereum land, a lot of the devs that work in Solidity are not super familiar with blockchain internals and are not super familiar with like the complexity under the hood. That's just like the biggest difference in my mind. Like working with a lot of Cosmos devs, if we were to like talk them through like the complexities of IBC, the complexities of the different like chain internal modules that are exposed to them as an application builder or like the app chain builder, they got these things. Like they could work with these things, and that proved to be a challenge when it comes to. I'll call it IBC Classic now because the ICF is working on a new version of IBC called IBC Eureka or IBC V2. That's a little bit simpler. We're trying to work with Ethereum devs on, like I said, the core IBC side or IBC Classic. They're just not familiar with a lot of the abstractions. The UX wasn't like intuitive to them. This is one of the reasons why for now we're focused on our new product, which we call Proof API. To get much simpler UX. So they're like, don't worry about all this other stuff. Don't worry about this complicated integration or these like additional concepts that you need to know. The only thing you need to know is that you have some things that happen in your application and you want to prove that those things happened. And you want to have a simple API where you can just request this proof. Be like, hey, look, my application did or produced these events or produced these logs on these chains. Give me a proof of that. And then once I get the proof, I want to be able to use the proof anywhere I want. So
So all right. So one thing which is like kind of heavily discussed about the like a dev ecosystem or somebody who is kind of have a neutral opinion, that what Ethereum is trying to do with the roll up scaling model, it is kind of a inspiration from what Cosmos tried to do with the Cosmos Hub
yes.
or the Cosmos like the IBC model. So first of all, first thought is what is your opinion on that? And second thing is, I think I think I want to know this first. Then I have another question on this Cosmos Ethereum thing. Yeah, is it like that? Yeah. Please.
I would say, yeah, it's more or less the same like idea that you want to have applications would have their own block space or own their own block space. The actual implementation details are a little bit different. Like layer ones versus rollups is a little bit different. There's some difference there. But more or less, it's the same thing. Like if I look at the OP stack, I look at these frameworks, they're essentially moving in the direction of creating these like app frameworks. Right now, they're like generalized L2 frameworks, meaning this is generalized VM, but they're over time, as they add customization, they're becoming closer and closer to the Cosmos SDK. And also that suite of there's other SDKs as well now, of course. But yeah, I see the two as very similar. There's a lot of learnings that can be brought over. And we're trying to apply a lot of the learnings that we had in the Cosmos to our work in Ethereum.
So one thing is, I don't know how if I can name the project as field, because one thing I've learned slowly that, okay, it is the token and the products are not kind of linked most of the times. So Cosmos or Atom as a token might not be that much successful, but you pick up any big project, there is kind of this Cosmos SDKs inside of the Tendermint consensus or some kind of Cosmos element they use underneath. But I don't know, is it a PR activity or is it kind of a, if I call it, it's not that successful, the Cosmos ecosystem? Like, want to know, like, can we kind of is the Cosmos ecosystem is kind of written off? There is no such big possibility over there, or there can be a big major like a Cosmos shift as we proceed in the bull market or beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for a long time, people have been very bearish on Atom, and not for good reason. I think there was a clear lack of like focus on product and customers. And there's I don't know if you've been following the Cosmos, but there's been a change in leadership. So recently, Ethan Buckman stepped down from the ICF. Josh Cincinnati, I think from Mina, I believe, took over on the foundation side. But I think real power or like real direction is being set by Skip. So the ICF acquired Skip protocol. Magnus and Barry are very like product and customer minded. Probably one of the most product and customer minded folks like in the Cosmos. I flipped bullish at him because of this. I think before the ICF's directive was, let's invest in these frameworks and this tech, but not in Atom in the Cosmos Hub. Now with Barry and Mag at the helm, they're like trying to create a renewed focus or strategy around what the Cosmos could look like with Atom at the center. I think this does come into somewhat of a conflict if the hub takes the path of becoming the settlement layer for rollups, as like Initio or Dimension, or maybe even Celestia now, because Celestia also has settlement layer aspirations with their ZK accounts and lazy bridging stuff. So I think that competition is healthy, and I'm happy to see what they do with Atom the token and the hub in this new roadmap.
I think one thing what I've seen in Cosmos ecosystem projects, lots of them have, I think even the Cosmos main account in Twitter, they also speaks kind of unlocking the liquidity of Bitcoin. They want to be the settlement layer or some layer of Bitcoin. So is it kind of they're trying to capture the Bitcoin market, or what's this thing as of now, if you have something to say?
Oh, I think that's just Babylon. I'm not aware of any other Cosmos. Like, I think there's Babylon and there's Nomic BTC that's trying to
I think
create like a
there's a project called Persistence, and this is just coming top of my mind. They were kind of the Cosmos staking hub. They just became the BTC staking hub. If you there is that, and even the main Cosmos Twitter page, I think if I'm not wrong, mentioned kind of we are the unlocking the capital of BTC. Something like that was being mentioned. So I kind of pre-assumed that ecosystem is focusing on the BTC scaling part. Is it?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not that familiar with Persistence. I just Googled it. Yeah, I think like these are individual products. This is not like, I don't believe that the ICF has come out and made a statement that they're pursuing this. I think these are just individual projects that are chasing this, and I think it's due to a liquidity problem in the Cosmos. There's like Noble provides a lot of USDC liquidity, but we need more liquidity in the Cosmos, which is another problem that Skip and actually now that Skip's part of the ICF that they're trying to address. So whether they like lean into the BTC thing, maybe, whether they want to source more liquidity from, I don't know, Solana or Ethereum, also maybe. My impression is that they're going to go after all these ecosystems.
All right. So like on based on that, like why kind of you switch to Cosmos to Ethereum landscape?
We're just going where the customers are. Frankly speaking, and then we made this switch over a year ago. So we're also like betting on the future at that time. When we made the bet, the thesis was we believe that the roll-up market is going to grow the fastest, or like was already the furthest along on Ethereum, and will grow the fastest on Ethereum. If we stayed in the Cosmos, we would have to bet on the roll-up market on Dimension, the roll-up market on Initio, which is not launched yet, and the roll-up market on Celestia, which also is not like there's one, I believe, but they will have more in the future. So the goal was like, okay, do we bet on all these things falling in place in the Cosmos, or do we go to where the market is today and where we think the market will grow the fastest? Obviously, this doesn't preclude us from working with rollups in the Cosmos as well in the future, but now like we just want to like work with where our customer base is growing the quickest.
Awesome, cool. I think we got a solid understanding about the Cosmos versus Ethereum landscape. Nothing against or nothing for, but
No.
I think it is a good starting point for anybody to think or want to build. Okay, where to kind of build something? Is it Ethereum or the Cosmos? And all the and I think see that is where the thing is that people who kind of know the tech, they knows Cosmos is a superpower. But why it doesn't get that much attention and everything? I think we can have a separate episode debating that. But let's come back to Polymer for that moment. I
Okay.
think we got an introduction of Polymer. It's kind of as of now connecting all the Ethereum rollups. So want to know like what are the current immediate problems in the interop space, because we are seeing lots of interop projects kind of booming up almost daily. So what are the current interop problems you are observing and how Polymer is tackling those?
Yeah, so we want to have a very focused approach here because with Interop, you could come out and say like you could build anything, meaning that like everyone's my customer, anything cross-chain is my customer. You can build like NFTs like this, and that, or like token bridge, and you can get really distracted with like a lot of these different things. And I think like you're going to lose focus, and it's very hard to address a specific customer segment like that. And this is part of the reason why we decided to focus on rollups, decided to focus on a single ecosystem of rollups in Ethereum. And in terms of the go-to-market market that we're targeting intents. So we want to focus specifically on an intense settlement and solving that problem really well first. We'll also can solve other things, but this is just kind of our immediate focus. And if I were to describe the problem to you, let's use a cross as an example. Right now, a cross uses UMA, their optimistic oracle system, for settlement of intents. This means that when a solver makes a fill, they're waiting anywhere between 1 to 2 hours to get their funds back on whatever chain that they designate. This means that the capital efficiency of the system is very low. Polymer aims to improve this by, instead of the solver then needing to wait for this optimistic oracle to settle the transaction, they can pessimistically and eagerly provide a proof that they made a fill in a very low latency fashion. And with Polymer today, they were able to do that in 6 to 10 seconds. So now you take this 1 to 2 hour settlement time all the way down to 6 to 10 seconds, and the solvers can then have more capital velocity and can handle fills across a much larger range of balances and latencies, or balance size and latencies.
Cool. So I think that is one differentiation about across. But let's say like there are like as you mentioned that Interop is a vast space, and there are so many protocols who are kind of hammering on the same one narrative. Hey, we are solving the Interop problem. We are connecting the chains by doing this, doing that, and there are so many things like there are solvers. There's this entire ecosystem kind of booming up. So like what will be the kind of the USPs if I mention in that way of Polymer? What are the like unique firepower of what Polymer is bringing to solve the interop problems?
Yeah, so the biggest difference right now in our approach, and this comes from having a lot of conversations with builders, is that we've moved away from trying to sell messaging directly. So if you think of messaging as sending messages on top of some verification layer, and then on top of that, you can have like token bridges and other like application level protocols. We've gone all the way down the stack to say, we're just going to sell proofs directly. And what this means is it satisfies some of our goals. And some of our goals were we want to have the simplest integration UX possible. We want it to be as cost effective as possible and as fast as possible. So like 3 tenets, integration UX, speed, and cost. And in terms of integration UX, it means that they don't need to integrate any smart contracts on the source chain, meaning that there's no, I need to integrate this like message API contract. I need to hook up all my contracts to this message API interface. Instead, they say that my application will emit some event that something happened. I can then prove this event. And with this proof that I get, I can use that proof on any chain to prove that that event was executed within my application context. And we found that with a lot of app chains, and there's a lot of chains kind of heading in this direction, you have this model where you have this hub chain. Let's call it an application hub. And then you have all these application spokes. So whether this is a cross-chain yield farm, cross-chain AMM, cross-chain something, you have this hub and spoke model to it for the most part. And the difference is for a lot of these protocols is that on the spokes, block space can be quite expensive, meaning that they're going to get the most value in their application from Arbitrum, from Base. And block space on Arbitrum and Base is not cheap. But on their hub chain, block space is very cheap because it's just their application. They have an abundance of block space. It's the cost of doing anything there is far low, orders of magnitude lower. So we realized that with our proof product versus messaging, when it comes to messaging, you split your costs. So part of your costs is on the spoke, on the source. And then part of your costs is on the destination or the hub. And because you split these costs, and these costs are relatively high, where we're talking like 400K plus in terms of gas costs for messaging protocols per message. And this does not include any protocol fees. Some in our protocols will subsidize fees, some don't. So 400K plus gas. And you bear this cost across both. So the total cost of the system can cost you cents to tens of cents. This is real money, like per message. With our system, the entire cost is borne on the destination chain, the hub, where block space is cheap. And it's going to cost like roughly like 300K-ish gas. So the total cost of gas, the total gas is less. In addition to the cost of gas in the place that we use it is also less. So now the total cost in the system, the real cost in the system is a fraction of a cent. So it's orders of magnitude less than the messaging approach with this model. So in terms of cost, it just made a lot of sense for builders. Builders like the UX, builders like the like speed and efficiency of it. So that's kind of what we're focused on today.
I think this is a very technical deep down of that. I think you come in having the technical mindset. I think it will be very useful for devs who are, let's say, trying to build on Polymer. But if I kind of simplify the entire understanding both for the listeners and also for me, let's say like there are this 50 rollups, big rollups in Ethereum. There is Optimism and Arbitrum and everything, right? And they kind of don't cross communicate properly, right? So kind of want to know about, if you can explain it simplistically, how this cross, like various Ethereum rollups communicate now. Let's say Optimism, Arbitrum, Polygon, these three rollups are communicating. And let's say how Polymer is coming in and making the process very efficient, fast, and cheap.
Yeah, so today, the latency at which the state of one chain, like the block header of one chain is available on another chain, especially cross ecosystem, is very slow. So you're talking about days latency or more, because right now you can propagate the headers of a chain through the native bridge of the rollup. It's just really slow. We tried that at first, actually. That's one of the first things that we did. People didn't really want to buy it. What Polymer does today is it makes the state of all these blockchains, all of these rollups on Ethereum available to each other within seconds, as close to block time as possible. So at a high level, you can essentially start building these applications, treating the state machine of the rollups across all these rollups as pretty much the same state machine.
So is this, I saw one kind of a marketing line which Polymer uses. We send states, not messages.
Yes.
So is it where it's coming from, right?
Yeah, that's where it's coming from.
Currently the rollups, let's say how Arbitrum and Polygon or Arbitrum Optimism are communicating, is it by sending the message? There's a message interop layer, or how they're communicating at currently?
So there's only third-party interop protocols providing messaging between Arbitrum and you said Polygon? Okay, yeah. So between Arbitrum,
anything, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so between Arbitrum and Polygon, it's only third parties. And what my understanding of these third-party systems is that they're only sending the messages. And you can send these messages at like fairly like low latencies. Like per message, I can send a message between like seconds to like minutes or longer. And they're not sharing the state of the chains, if that makes sense. Polymer is the only solution that does this on-chain, that allows the block headers of all of these rollups to be propagated to all other rollups, if that makes sense. Like Polymer receives as a stream the headers of all of its connected rollups, and then provides that stream to all other rollups to consume. So Polymer provides the headers, and in the headers you can prove events, you can prove anything that you want, whereas like our competitors only stream messages, not the state. At least between Polygon and Arbitrum. I'm not talking about the native interop protocols. The native interop protocols work differently, which we can talk about later if you want.
Yeah, I think where I was coming on next. So kind of what kind of stopping Ethereum ecosystem, be it the rollups or be it the Ethereum as a whole, kind of creating these native interops. Why are they not building it? Why are we relying on third-party protocols?
I mean, it's from a technical perspective, it's not
Yeah.
the most like. It's technically challenging. You know what? I'll talk about the technical challenges first, and then I'll talk about like maybe why this isn't happening. The technical challenges, in my opinion, are it's more of a settlement time problem than it is a messaging problem. And what I mean by this is for rollups that settle on the same settlement layer, you can essentially define what a cross rollup interaction looks like, and then verify that when the rollup settles with these other rollups. And maybe we'll call that a rollup cluster. So in this hypothetical world, you could have rollups of different rollup clusters settle together, settle their cross-chain interactions. And then this means that when you actually communicate really quickly across these rollups, when you do interop across these rollups, you can do like little to no verification. You can just say like, I'm just going to like trust whatever you send me. Like you just send me a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to assume it's correct because it's going to be checked later. In this model, the hardest problem is the settlement logic in the rollup frameworks and how to get different rollup frameworks to expose the same settlement logic that can be chained together at settlement time for cross rollup things. Because right now, rollup frameworks don't do that. You only prove the state transition of that single rollup state machine, meaning that these rollup frameworks are not multi rollup aware, meaning that like they don't know about these other rollups. Optimism is working on the solution for like superchain native interop. I believe every ecosystem is working on a solution for their ecosystem. It's just very difficult in my mind to get these rollup framework maintainers to all agree on the same settlement logic and the same way to express these cross rollup interactions. I like looking at these different ecosystems. They all have different opinions. They all have different standards. Maybe we can coalesce at some point, but I think in the meantime, we're kind of stuck in this place where I believe that in like a year and a half's time, because they're still being developed, right? Like none of these like settlement time verification of cross rollup interactions that doesn't exist yet. At least in the frameworks that I'm talking about, I think maybe in a year's time you'll have that for specific rollup frameworks. But to have it across all rollup frameworks may take decades. I don't know when they're going to agree on this sort of thing.
So kind of if I simplify about if I pick up your brain, how things are going to look. Let's say there is Optimism's superchain ecosystem. There is one Arbitrum Orbit ecosystem, Polygon ecosystem, ZK Sync ecosystem. These are the four largest. They will have their own native interop. And let's say when we will kind of cross communicate between Polygon Arbitrum or Arbitrum Optimism or ZK Sync Polygon, you need something like Polymer as of now or the foreseeable future to communicate efficiently. Is it what it is?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's going to be true long term, because even if you could take any of these frameworks, basically like we live in a future world where everyone gets along, and like ZK Sync's framework is interoperable with like OP Stack is interoperable with like Polygon CDK or whatever they're calling it. Their stack today is interoperable with Arbitrum Nitro, and you're in this like happy world where like I can have a Nitro rollup, an OP Stack rollup, ZK Stack rollup, and I can all join the same cluster and like be interoperable with each other. Even in this world, I don't believe you will find every rollup in the same cluster. You have this property, if you want to do the settle time verification, that depending on the slowest rollup, everyone's latency, I guess to finality, is bounded by that. So you can imagine that there's some rollups that want to use ZK tech to settle faster, some rollups that want to be optimistic. Those rollups, do the ZK rollups that are already paying for ZK verification want to slow down their settlement times by joining a cluster with an optimistic rollup? I'm not sure. Maybe they find some benefit to it. Maybe they don't. Most likely, realistically, that they won't. And even with optimistic rollups, you can have different configurations and NZK rollups as well. Like some rollups publish data every 2 minutes and can potentially settle like in 2 minutes time or like minutes time. And then some rollups, they publish data every hour, every day. Sometimes they publish data every week. We've seen like really crazy configurations. Like if one guy runs I don't know, like a 30-minute mile, is that person going to race a person that runs a 5-minute mile? Like, no, these people are inherently in like running different races. Like they're in different brackets. So I still anticipate that long term, even with like full interoperability across all frameworks, that we'll still see a lot of different clusters of rollups that will require something like Polymer to kind of fit in the middle.
Awesome. I think as you were like focusing on the Ethereum ecosystem, if we kind of expand our horizon, like let's say like Move ecosystem is getting very popular nowadays. The BTC ecosystem is going up, like lots of things are going. Even if we say if Cosmos also comes up, how is the landscape there? Like the non-EVM ecosystems, if we want to connect EVM ecosystems, let's say BTC or Move or others, how is the landscape there?
Yeah. Frankly speaking, I don't like. Yeah, there's a lot of interest. So I think Rushi did a great job. I love Rushi in bringing attention to the Move ecosystem, to movement as a chain. A lot of momentum behind that project. Like folks like Fluent that are doing like blended execution. Folks like Eclipse, like Tay and the team, they're like fantastic team, and a fantastic project. And I think they bring a lot of attention to the SVM on Ethereum. However, I'm not seeing like there's a gap between having a single rollup and having a framework to spin up additional rollups and having a large pipeline of rollups lining up to build on that framework. I would say that for them to get to where OP stack is for the EVM, we're looking at least a year away. Meaning that they're at least a year away from having like a trailing pipeline of 400 projects queued to launch a Move VM rollup on Ethereum using their stack. Like their focus is on launching their initial chain. It takes time to build the framework. Like when Optimism first launched, there wasn't magically like 300 projects that are like, oh, I want to use like Optimism OVM stack to launch my rollup. There was like 3 or 4. They're working with a few. Over time, the OP stack became much more mature, and now you have this long queue, like hundreds of projects that are trying to launch on the OP stack. It will just take some time. So like right now, our focus is on where the customers are today, because we have to build a business.
Awesome. I think moving to the next part is where is Eigenlayer coming in the entire Polymer like a Polymer plan as of now? Like where you guys are using the Eigenlayer stack?
So right now we're using EigenDA. And the reason why EigenDA is so powerful for us is because our use case is actually very data intensive. I think most people are under this impression that, oh yeah, Interop, probably not that data intensive. The reason why that isn't true, especially when we use sequencer pre-confirmations, is that OP stack sequencers today sign over the entire transaction data of their rollup. So we've had questions where, why can't I just use a sequencer pre-conf directly in connected rollup? Like, why can't Optimism and Base just gossip pre-confs to each other, and have it work? Well, the issue is because if you take the transaction data of one rollup, you publish it to the other rollup, and you take the transaction data of that rollup, you publish it to the other rollup. There's this write amplification property that your data size explodes exponentially. It just like you're posting the same data back and forth. It doubles every time. Posting that to Polymer helps because our chain is able to consume these pre-confirmations and not create this like write amplification overhead. But the issue there is that the payload sizes are pretty large. So we have pretty stringent like data requirements. Just Base alone, Base is doing, I believe I saw the other day that they're like topping 80 kilobytes a second, 100 kilobytes a second right now, and growing. When Mega ETH comes online, that numbers can be very big. We're expecting that we're already using like quite a bit of data on mainnet. It already exceeds that of Ethereum DA. So EigenDA is giving us the bandwidth that we need to scale to connect all these different rollups.
I think one question I definitely want to ask, and of you being a Cosmos native project, and I think there is this ecosystem friendship or ecosystem inclination. I think for everybody is there, if I'm not wrong. Very few people are okay, fine, I'm very neutral and whatever. I might be wrong here with you, but yeah, this is my thought. I think why you didn't choose Celestia, because they are also very propagative with the DA. And what was the thought process? Like, how is EigenDA better than Celestia, or is it very specific to your use case? How is the thing?
It's the market that we're going after. Like if we were focused on sovereign rollups, Celestia would be the de facto choice. Like there's like Celestia for sovereign rollups makes a ton of sense. That's their ecosystem. If we're building for like initial rollups, like Cosmos basic rollup or rollup ecosystems, Celestia makes the most sense. Because we're building for Ethereum rollups, from our perspective, it makes much more sense to use Eigen as like you're inherently using rollups that are building within this ecosystem. Eigen is a product built specifically for the Ethereum ecosystem. It's more of just like a customer kind of alignment thing. In terms of the actual tech, they made different trade-offs. Celestia has a validator set. The overhead of the ecosystem is not as performance-oriented as Eigen. If you look at Sriram's posts about Eigen, they're like, we made certain trade-offs. And obviously, there's always a trade-off spectrum, right? Like, we made certain trade-offs. That means that, like, perhaps in some ways, our stack is not as decentralized as Celestia's stack. But what it means is we can achieve higher bandwidth at lower cost to the end user. And that was really important to us because at some point you need to sit down and assess like your North Stars product-wise. And our North Stars based on builder conversations became simplicity, cost, and speed. And cost is a pillar. So when we make decisions, we need to choose infra technologies that are also optimizing for cost. That like not only are they cost effective today, but they're cost effective in the long term because of the design decisions, because of the direction that they're heading.
Okay, by sovereign rollups means those are like it can go to any ecosystem. Is it like that? Not specific to one ecosystem. This is what you mean by sovereign rollups, or
Yeah.
so by
Yeah.
yeah. So another one more thing, I think EigenDA is kind of, they obviously inherit the Ethereum trust via Eigenlayer stack, and I think they are the one of the biggest AVSs, which has kind of billions of dollar in restake value. I think I've seen Sriram's tweet and the entire debate which was going in the about that Celestia versus EigenDA. So if you can you specify a little bit why EigenDA is not as decentralized as it is? Because in my understanding, it's kind of inheriting the Ethereum security, which is kind of having a lots of restaked value. And so if you can specify a little bit on that, easy.
I think the major complaint that I've seen is this concept of like fisherman's dilemma. I believe like the architecture before was and the Eigen team is trying to address this. They're actively trying to address this. TBD on the solution. I haven't been following the development actively, but previously the idea was okay. In order to prove that the data actually exists, let's use a data availability challenge contract. And what that is like if you think that the DA layer is censoring a portion of a block or a whole block, then you request that block on chain. You basically challenge the DA layer to produce that block. And I think the claim there is that fisherman's dilemma means that I guess like the malicious actor can always censor until challenged. But this means that there's no like what incentive is there to challenge if you know that you always lose? If that makes sense. Meaning that like this, like there's they're censoring and you want to challenge them, but if you do challenge them and you pay the whatever fee that you need to pay to challenge them, you always lose the challenge. So is there any incentive to challenge at all? If there's no incentive to challenge at all, could like the DA layer always be censored? That's the argument that I've seen. But like TBD on I guess what Eigen proposes next to solve this problem. It's the Celestia solution I guess is. They have a consensus layer. The consensus layer is like slashable if there's if this is consensus layer is also doing the sampling, so that you just slash that layer directly.
So kind of if the Eigen slashing is coming in, And let's say if somebody behaves maliciously at the DA level,
Mhm.
if you behave maliciously, I'll slash you. If something comes up, will it be a equivalent compared to Celestia, what kind of they are solving with the consensus? Or it is going to, like, still the trade-off will be there that Celestia is more decentralized than EigenDA.
Uh, I don't because I don't know what solution they have in mind. I wouldn't be able to comment. Yeah. So TBD on what they like. Once the solution is live, I'm happy to discuss that.
Cool. I think all this details, all these interrupt talks, and you being a like a very tech-minded and all, I think the end goal is to give the users a very nice UX and all. I think that is where the entire abstraction comes in. So before we kind of go towards the end of our discussion, I just want you to map out how the abstraction layer, let's say in 3-4 years, or let's say in like 1 year or 2 years, going to look for the user. If you can, if I paint a scenario, let's say now,
Yeah.
even now with all the abstracted wallets, with all the account abstractions, with multiple things, there are still, like, if I have to bridge from Arbitrum to Polygon, or if I have to bridge to Arbitrum to Optimism, there is a lot of things. You need a native token, you need to do this, change the token, go multi-chain. So how with the interop thing which Polymer is trying to do, or all the interop protocols are trying to do, how that abstraction layer is going to look for people in 2 years?
Yeah, I'm just gonna make a guess here because you can never be too sure that something's gonna play out. I've seen a few different approaches. So like if you look at chain abstraction providers, a lot of them are there's a few chain abstraction providers that are like resource lock oriented. Maybe one balance falls in this category, and there's a few chain abstraction providers that are account oriented or cross chain account oriented. For the cross-chain accounts, they have some folks that use like interchain accounts, where it's like a Cosmos construction. They're like, oh, you have an account on my chain then owns and controls all the accounts on these other chains, but you have to have like set up your account specifically on my chain. And the resource locks is like you deposit your funds into this resource lock, and you kind of use those funds like anywhere. My opinion is that like in like 2 years' time, I anticipate that some of this market is going to be solved for by native Ethereum protocols. And there's a protocol called EIP 7702 for account abstraction. It goes live in Pectra. So Pectra slated for sometime like early next year, Q1, Q2. I'm not exactly sure when they'll actually launch that on mainnet. But in this Pectra upgrade, you can, as a user, authorize a third party to, one, execute actions on your behalf. And then two, you can load a smart contract, any smart contract, into your user account that you can then use to execute some actions. You can do additional authentication and so on. So I think Hart has this great description. Hart talks about this in his talks, that this EIP 7702, when you combine that with across this ERC 7683, which is their intent standard, makes it so that you have this like remote control account. So without even having to do this like Cosmos like interchain account thing where you're like, oh, I need to manually set up like this account ownership across all these chains, and every time a user creates an account, if I'm integrated to like 50 chains, I need to create 50 transactions to set up these 50 cross-chain accounts. You don't have to do that. The user uses their private key, and now that private key owns all the accounts on all these different chains. It already did, right? It already did own it, but you don't need any gas. And you can have these like custom like app and authentication logic that can build on top. So I think this abstraction, this like remote control account abstraction with intents will become really popular, because now users can like specify a bunch of actions. They can be executed in batch or whatever, and they can be executed really quickly by these solvers. So you get this great cross-chain UX where like I'm a user, I have like 50 things I want to do. I do my 50 things and I get them all done in the matter of like seconds or less. And the solvers then, whatever info is, the solvers are built on top will take care of the settlement process and that sort of thing. So the user gets the best UX possible with existing infrastructure, with like no additional like other account abstraction thing that's like custom. It's all in protocol, all in like the native Ethereum protocol itself.
Cool. I think it's still kind of very technical for me to wrap around. I think I myself have to hear this up because I think the space itself is technical. How we understand things are on a very surface level, and you kind of building that stuff. I think that insights are coming with that. So yeah, I think thanks for like taking us to that much detail and all. I think this is one episode who are trying to understand the interop space. If they hear it, I think they will understand it a lot, and you can actually it can be a starting point to actually build things on Interop and maybe build things on Polymer as well. So I think before we wrap up, one thing want to know where we at the Polymer roadmap, like where we at currently, and what are the next 2 quarters as we are transitioning to the new year looking like.
Yeah, so we're very focused on getting stuff done in Q5. Um, we've been launched on mainnet for a few months now, initially with our messaging API, with IBC messaging. We're transitioning focus to our proof API product. We're currently undergoing active testing with it with a few like initial like customers. The folks are like more excited about the proof API because it was a byproduct of our initial conversations that we had with builders. We're launching this proof API product in Q1 or Q2 of next year for like more like general availability. And this would connect like a bunch of different rollups together. People would be able to prove different actions across them and so on.
Cool. I think thanks both for kind of joining us and kind of taking us through the entire journey of what is the difference between a Cosmos and Ethereum Interop space. Then the kind of a very overview of what Polymer is, and then both Interop and where Eigenlayer comes in and where Interop and abstraction is also coming in. I think I'll be keeping an eye on what you guys are doing, and as you mentioned, the mainnet is already live. Congratulations for that. I think more projects will build on Polymer. And as soon as new announcements are coming up, I am sure there will be some new things which you guys are cooking and I will be seeing in a few weeks. We'll love to have you again and jam on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on.